might as well get it going. So, go ahead.
Okay. Well, welcome to our chat on use of material from citizen journalists. We'll introduce ourselves. My name is Andrew Palczewski. I work here at the Voice of America. I manage social media for the English news, so Twitter and Facebook. And so I deal a lot with citizen journalists every day, providing us information or sending information our way, and also the information we send to them.
Hi, my name is Matt Hilburn. I'm a reporter here at VOA, and I've used a lot of information from citizen journalists in my reporting here at VOA, and as well on a side project that I have. It's been very useful. So hopefully this discussion.
Just with the Voice of America, the English news, so Twitter and Facebook, and so I deal a lot with citizen journalists every day, providing us information or sending information our way, and also
future past. There we go. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So go ahead.
Okay. Anything else you want to add? Okay.
No.
Great. So I guess we'll start. Does anybody have any questions that's watching? You can chat them to us, or however you usually send questions, or you can talk.
Should we introduce ourselves first?
Yes, please.
Okay, hi, my name is Angela. I come from Belgrade, Serbia. And I sent you a long question about citizen journalism and the way that you should react when you have some kind of situation. So I think that would be the start before. I think this one girl is also here, so maybe we can hear from her.
No. And just to recap your question for the other person that's watching, you're talking about the floods in Serbia, and you're saying that on social media, people were raising that this was, thousands of people have died, not dozens, and this got the, was it the government to change their information, I think you said. I'm just reading over your question now. And you said, do you think the media have to verify every bit of information that citizens put on the internet before publishing it, even if the country's in the state of emergency? I know for social media, and this is social media nowadays, everything is so instant. When we get information from people, and we haven't in the time that I've been working with social media, I don't think there's been any instances where we've gotten breaking news from people. Usually for us, it's people say, oh, there's this issue, or why don't you talk about this? But it's something that we always have to verify. Usually it goes from me, I bring it to an editor and say, oh, people are talking about this, do we have a story? And sometimes that'll influence what people write about, what to put on the website, what we send out on social media. For breaking news, and you can speak to this as a journalist here in terms of verification and things, for breaking news, we would want to try to verify it. If there were enough people that were saying the same things in social media, then that would be something that would maybe carry more weight than if one or two people only were saying it. But I think there's power there, definitely, for citizen journalists on social media, especially en masse. It's kind of this group force that happens when you get a lot of people that are doing this collectively. Then they can kind of collectively raise that voice and get that attention.
Okay.
I agree with Andrew on that point. Outside of VOA, I run a blog. Well, I used to run a blog, but I still run a Twitter feed and a Facebook page on our public transportation here in Washington, which is lacking in some ways, I think. Anyway, a lot of times somebody would post a picture of something broken or some accident or something on Twitter, and if there's just one or two, you kind of have to go look at who the person is, look at their profile, look at what they've been tweeting, see if they're sort of a serious social media person or if they've just popped on for a day and they may be trying to pass off some false information. But once you sort of get an overwhelming number of tweets or posts on Facebook, you can kind of piece together that what you're seeing in the virtual world is happening in the real world, and then I feel comfortable using that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things I do here at VOA is a show called Hashtag VOA, and it's a social media-driven show, and we often, actually every week, we have comments from our viewers, and we ask them a question about whatever the show topic is, and that's something we have to do as well. We have to look and see who these people are that are commenting, what the attitudes are. Sometimes we'll have just one person who has a one-off comment that we'll use and incorporate in the show, but more often than not, we look to see what the themes are, what multiple people are saying, and then kind of use that to pick what we're going to talk about and what comments we're going to use.
One more quick addition. I covered what's been going on in Iraq and Syria here, and citizen journalists are also good sort of police for what is real and what's not. I noticed a lot of people, you've got a lot of different interests going on in social media in Syria and Iraq, a lot of competing interests. And sometimes a side would post a picture of an alleged atrocity, and you would see and think, oh my gosh, this is a big story. But very soon, social media has a good way of self-correcting. People who know more than I do, or more than most journalists do, are actually on the ground there, were quick to point out that this picture is not from 2015. This picture is from 2012, and it's in Libya, not Syria. So it's good if you look. You see the ones that you might find useful in your reporting, but you also want to kind of look around them too to see if somebody with some credibility is denying those as being real.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Can I ask? Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes?
Yep.
Yes, how can you use YouTube accounts? For example, right now I'm from Ukraine. We have events, like a war on the east of the country, and usually journalists can't be in some places there. And citizens film some events and we just see them. But we can't know if it's really was there, or they just use some picture from events that were some years ago, for example. How can we, I don't know, maybe we should write to them and ask, or and do you have some practice of YouTube accounts with this citizen journalism?
Actually, we were talking about times it's questionable what's true and what's not, and so that is an issue that you run into. And then to your point as well, here in the U.S. there were riots in the city of Baltimore a few months ago, and so the news organization took a picture from social media and said, "Oh, Baltimore's on fire, it's burning." Well, the picture was actually from it wasn't even in the U.S. It was somewhere else in the world of a city that was on fire, and they got tricked into using that. So. The verification of information is a tough one on social media. As far as YouTube and broadcasting things out, I know that here we're using more new social media programs to do that kind of thing. One called Periscope, which allows you to live stream from a phone and send it out via Twitter. That kind of thing is I think increasingly being used in journalism and by citizen journalists. Everybody now with smartphones can just take out the smartphone and film something and either post it to YouTube or stream it live directly, which is great because you do get more information, but at the same time you have to make sure that it's accurate and real. I would go back to what I mentioned a little earlier, is that it's this kind of group voice. You have to look at the mass of information, and if you have a lot of people that are reporting on something, then it's more likely to be true. Here at VOA, we have a two-step verification process. So if we got just one video from someone, we wouldn't necessarily use it, or we'd say it's alleged, but the verification is important.
And what should I do, for example, if I'm working on Radio Liberty, and our editors tell us to write to these accounts and ask them if we can use their video. But verification take a lot of time, but we need this video right now. So what should we do? Should we wait, or can we use, for example, this video without this verification? Is it okay?
I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that, to be honest with you. I think there's a lot of common sense that you have to use. in thinking of the source of the video. I understand that timing is very important, but you would rather be a little bit late and make sure that you're right rather than be the first with wrong information. But I think just some common sense about I think it's probably best to reach out to them, but they're not always going to respond, and you can do a lot of research on your own to at least get you a better idea if what you're looking at is true or real.
With social media these days, too, a lot of journalists get caught in a trap where, especially for an event that has maybe a high number of casualties, they'll report incorrect numbers, trying to be the first one to break the news and get out there, and oftentimes it's wrong. So, like Matt said, it's sometimes better, and you look less foolish, really, if you wait and get the right number than if you're trying to be the first and you get something completely wrong, because people remember that it was wrong, and they'll bring it up again and again. So it's the importance of verification.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple questions in.
Okay.
So, this one is: Do you think that citizen journalists should attend courses or workshops to gain some knowledge about journalism and about their responsibilities? That's from Tatiana.
Short answer is yes, but I'll expand and say with the social media especially that people are using, there's training in that regard. I think people need to learn how to use that. And it's not just citizen journalists, it's people, even here at VOA, we're using, like I mentioned, Periscope. We're doing training on these new apps that people can use to gather news. As far as the ethos of journalism and the ethics behind it, I think absolutely citizen journalists should know what they should be able to film, what they shouldn't, and in some cases that can be good because people might say, oh, I can't film this person, I didn't get their permission on the street. Well, maybe you can, and that's one of the, something journalistic that you can apply. I think that will make the information that citizen journalists transmit more accurate. I think it will make the whole process easier, and it'll be more helpful to use that information in journalism because it'll just kind of streamline the process and make it more efficient.
We're talking about, just for my own clarification, when we're talking about citizen journalists, are we talking about just sort of like freelance journalists who are running a blog or something, or just somebody who happens to be walking down the street when there's a news event and they've never thought of themselves as a journalist, and they have their smartphone and they're taking pictures? Okay. I don't think they need training.
Really?
Yeah.
Ideally, sure, but
Right.
I'll disagree with him.
Okay. Counterpoint. No, it's good to have the familiarity with just how I think it works. But yeah, nowadays anybody can just take out a smartphone and film it and then submit it. We have an app here at VOA actually that allows people to transmit photos and videos directly to us, and we can use them. So I will say that you're correct. Maybe that you don't need formal training, but it's good to have a kind of a background knowledge.
Off from the side, I'll say it's it's the responsibility of the news organization that's publishing it, to make sure that whatever is out there is up to journalistic standards. So, okay, next one.
Okay.
What are the possible drawbacks or dangers of citizen journalism?
Well, I think in what I mentioned before, in the Syrian civil war and the Iraqi civil war, you have ISIS, which has been lauded as masterminds of social media. Then you have their enemies are also engaged in that battlefield as well, each with an agenda, and you've got to be really careful about what you're using. And like I said, people posting photos of alleged massacres that didn't happen. It didn't happen in Syria or Iraq, or happened years and years ago and are completely unrelated to the events going on there. Just using sort of shocking photos to drive an agenda. So you could. I think the biggest danger is being co-opted by misinformation.
I would agree with that. It's as we said earlier, it's important to make sure that everything's verified, that it's accurate, because ultimately, as Mark said off camera, that falls on the news agency that's getting the information. So that can be a peril for sure.
But if you do mess up, I think it's really, and I have on my blog many times, be forthcoming with your readership as quickly as you can, as soon as you know, or your viewers or listeners, as soon as you realize that you've passed on something that may not be accurate, come clean with your audience about it to restore their credibility in you. We all make mistakes. It's going to happen.
Yeah, one question. It's related with the question that I already sent you, because here in Serbia, law wasn't really, I don't know, strict about our Twitter or Facebook medias. So before these floods, Twitter and Facebook were considered like some kind of media platform. And these people who were writing about thousands of deaths and stuff like that, they were accused by police that they were spreading panic. And they were arrested and they were put in jail. Because they used social media to, I suppose, publish information about these thousands of deaths, and nobody could verify it still. And because of that, police basically accused them that they were spreading panic through medias. And that caused some kind of riots and stuff like that. So when you asked, should these citizen journalists be trained? This is a tricky question when you come from a country as I do, where government can sometimes be really oppressive. And sometimes when you just put it out there with best intentions because you think that, I don't know, government is hiding information about how many people died actually and trying to solve the problem with their own way. But these people were actually in jail for 10 days because they were publishing information on their private Twitter and Facebook accounts. So I don't know, what do you think about it? Is it really something that dangerous when you say, do you have some kind of consequences when you write something on Twitter or Facebook as a citizen, not as a journalist?
Well, I think anything that you put on social media is going to be public, so there's always that to keep in mind. That being said, I think that it's a risk that you take if you're trying to get the information out, and unfortunately in societies that are maybe more repressive, that's a risk that journalists take, it's a risk that citizens take when they post this information online, trying to expose it. I think any time that happens, it's a danger for sure. And in that regard, that's where citizens, I guess, kind of become like journalists, because journalists can face this oppression and they get these crackdowns, and journalists can be put in jail. And then citizens who are reporting on these things, they can also be. I mean, it's unfortunate. I guess it's one of those things that you weigh, the information that you're putting out, and think about the consequences in that way. But it's, and ideally it would be, you could put up the information freely and it would be no problem, but.
Yeah, okay.
Do you want to hit another one of the questions from you? Yeah. Arbor, the very last one, just asked. Okay. Via chat, so.
Okay. Do you want to take a stab at the question?
I think this one I didn't know before I came here, so this was kind of interesting to me, what our rules at VOA are for posting this stuff. And what our rules are, as far as I understand, Mark, elaborate if you want. I think I'm just going to regurgitate what you said. But if we're going to use a YouTube, a piece of a YouTube video or some segment of a YouTube video in a TV piece, then we do have to actually get in touch with the person who shot the video and ask their permission for it. Same with photos and whatnot that might be used in a broadcast. But if we're just going to embed a tweet or a Facebook post or a YouTube video using their embed code, then we do have to qualify it with this is alleged to have been filmed, or this photo allegedly was taken by so-and-so at such and such place. But as long as it's embedded, that sort of frees you up to use it a little bit more liberally than in a TV package.
Right. Yeah, and that's just this is Mark. That's just as far as the copyright issues. As long as we're using it using that social media within the parameters of the social media platform. For example, YouTube allows you to embed videos, and people who post videos can say, please don't allow this video to be embedded, and the same with tweets, etc. But before that even happens, there's we scrutinize it and try to verify it as much as we can. Often even contacting the person just to make sure, the person who posted the content, just to make sure that it really is what they say it is. I'm trying to hit this one next.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a question here from Arbor. He says, is there a competition between journalists and citizen journalism? I've heard of cases of people being paid if they have recordings from the field. Do you think there's some place for competition? Do you think journalists are in risk from this kind of in-the-field journalism? No, I don't think there's a risk, because I think that you still have to have the training and the editorial decision-making to be a professional journalist. I think it's also a net positive for journalists, because these citizens aren't reporting necessarily. They're not doing a TV stand-up, or they're not writing a web article or a radio piece or something like that. They're providing the content, and then the journalists take that content that they get and then turn that into the outputs, whether it's an article or a TV package or what have you. So I think it's a positive, because you ultimately get more information that way, and you get more unique information that you wouldn't necessarily get from places around the world. I'm trying to think of a good example, but perhaps Nepal. If we had a VOA person who was there, but if we didn't, maybe we could get photos from people who were on the ground there, and then use those photos, and then we could write an article using those photos. So I don't know that there's competition between the two. I think it's more of a partnership, I would say. And I will say that for professional journalists too, I think that they're adapting some of the techniques of citizen journalists, where citizen journalists are taking these videos, they're streaming through Periscope or posting videos on Twitter and YouTube, and I think journalists now are starting to do that more and more. They're starting to do their own iPhone videos from the field, or their own short little video clips. So I think that they have borrowed from what citizen journalism is and some of the tactics of citizen journalism, but I think ultimately it's like I said, a partnership between the two.
All right, here's a question. All right, I'll read the question and see if you guys.
Okay.
A question from Dragana. How would you relate or connect citizen journalism and constituents for a theory of media, an essay written by Hans Enzensberger a few decades ago? Have we come to the new use of media which belongs to all and everyone can equally take part in it?
I'm not familiar with that essay, but yes, I think so. We're all potentially we've all potentially got the next viral video or photo unfolding in front of us every day, whether we're journalists or not. So.
Yeah, and it speaks to what I was talking about a little earlier. I think that it's a partnership. Everyone can be involved. You take out your phone and you take a picture of something, you can send it into VOA or wherever, and then when it comes to us, we write an article about it, we use it in a story, and then it goes out to everyone.
And people want to be involved. I found in my blogging that people really want to contribute to something that they feel is worth contributing to.
Do you want to take another question from the submitted?
Yeah. Let's see. We talked about
the ones from Violetta.
Yeah. So we have a couple questions from Violetta from Serbia. She asks, how do journalists determine the accuracy of the news reported by citizens? I'll start with that one, because there are a couple questions here. Determining the accuracy, it's tricky. Again, you can fall into the trap very easily, where you see a photo and say, "Oh, this looks great. Let me use this," and then after the fact, you find out it's not accurate. It doesn't accurately depict what's going on. So I think there's you need to do your diligence or due diligence in terms of checking up on things that you get in, make sure they're accurate, checking what other people are saying. Just because you get something from one person doesn't necessarily mean it's accurate, but if you're getting it from maybe hundreds of people, or you're seeing hundreds of people talk about something, you can say, okay, maybe there's some weight behind this. But it really is a case-by-case basis. I know that in the social media that I manage here, people for a while were sending in photos from Venezuela and saying, oh, we have these terrible conditions, and then President Chavez is terrible, things that he's doing. And they were accurate, but they also, if you looked at their profiles on social media, they had an agenda, and they had a specific position they were trying to push. So you have to kind of look into that and say, okay, well, are these photos accurately depicting what they're talking about, or are they, is it objective, or maybe is it trying to push an agenda or push a particular viewpoint? So doing that kind of research, but again, it's case by case. It depends on what the issue is and what the story is and what you're getting in from people. Her second question, she said, do you think it's a positive or negative thing to have so many new technology, social networks that helps everyone to be a reporter? I touched on this a little earlier, but I think it's a good thing for sure, because we get the information in from people and then we produce the news from that. It's really an aid that assists us. The one thing I mentioned too, a Periscope that we're using here, it allows people to live stream events. And this past weekend here in the U.S. was Memorial Day. It's a holiday to celebrate servicemen and women who have died fighting in the U.S. or behalf of the U.S. They do this motorcycle rally in Washington, D.C. called Rolling Thunder, and it's 3 hours long. It's, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of motorcycles come through Washington, D.C. And I use this Periscope app to film that and transmit that on the VOA Twitter account so people around the world could see that. So it's, it really is anybody who's at any event can be a reporter, and I think it's a good thing ultimately. And then the last question, how do you separate the facts reported by citizens from the ones reported by journalists in the field? I guess this kind of alludes to the accuracy again. Facts reported by citizens versus ones reported by journalists in the field. I mean that they, sometimes journalists get it wrong and citizens say, oh, this is accurate, and if you get enough people and you can verify it, then you can use that to correct. Other times people are, like I said, are trying to push a position or something, and their facts may not be actually factual. So you have to kind of weigh it on a case-by-case basis and see what those different, facts are and what those elements are. There are times when we get, people writing in on Twitter saying, oh, this is actually not true, and then we'll pass it along and make a correction from that. So it's a kind of a check and balance, I guess. The citizen journalists can point out things, but they're not always factual. So you have to weigh that.
And I think you can mix the two. I mean, any story has conflict in it. This person says this happened. This person says this happened. You can blend together citizen journalists and official journalists' viewpoint. You could say so and so from the New York Times reported that this happened, but people on the ground posted many videos saying the opposite was true. Something like that.
Julia's.
Okay. Yulia asked, what do you think about citizen journalism's future? Could it substitute the mainstream media? I don't know that it could substitute it. I think, like I said, it could supplement it. And I think the future, I think it's only going to expand. It seems like every week there's a new app or program or social media website. I think it's only going to continue and it's only going to grow. More and more people around the world are having, smartphones and phones with cameras. I think the next step is going to be getting photos and videos and accounts from places like I alluded to earlier where we can't be or couldn't go. And I think it's any chance that you can get more information out there and share these experiences to a broader audience and include a broader audience, I think is a good thing. So I think that's the direction it's going in.
I don't know that it could substitute for the mainstream media either. I think they're sort of go together. For example, when there's breaking news, I go to Twitter. That's the only, and sometimes I still have to remind myself. I'm older, so I will get online, and if I hear something, I'll Google it, and I'll be like, oh, it's not on the internet yet. And I'm like, oh no, go to Twitter, and then there's tons and tons of tweets about it. So, but then if I want to read more thoughtful, analytic aspects of that story, then I'll tune in or click on mainstream reporting. And
on that note about Twitter, I think in addition to it growing and citizen journalism expanding around the world, it's going to be faster. And that's an issue, and we've talked about that in a couple of the questions, with accuracy. It's going to be, you can get information in the click of a couple keystrokes on Twitter, but is that information accurate? So I think there's going to be more questions on that. So I think the questions that we've been talking about, the issues we've been talking about, aren't going to go away, and I think they're going to become bigger issues for newsrooms as more and more people are sending things in, which I think they will.
We have another question from Dragana. He asks, does the rise of citizen journalism mean fewer jobs for professional journalists?
I hope not. as someone working in a journalistic organization.
Everything these days means fewer jobs for professional journalists.
But I hope not. I think as we've been talking about, I think it's more of a partnership. I think you need people who are still going to produce the TV packages and write the web stories or write the newspaper articles and do the radio pieces. So I think that using the information from citizen journalists only supplements that. So and hopefully won't supplant it.
As a professional journalist, you would have some institutional knowledge behind just sort of the day of events that you can bring to the table to add value to opinions and events going on at the moment.
And I think actually the citizen journalism may lead to additional jobs, but maybe some different jobs where you're having people who are gathering news from Twitter and Facebook and other social media. So it may actually, I think it's leading to new positions in journalism and new positions that didn't exist 10 years ago because the social media didn't exist 10 years ago. So I think you're going to see maybe that shift and more incorporating more of that. A lot of news organizations now, including VOA here, we're doing more short videos, we're doing more audience-driven kind of things, so I think you'll see more of that used by journalists.
Like, 10 years ago, your job here didn't exist.
Right.
And
I mean, it's
Jess's job at the Washington Post didn't exist.
Right.
His job, and then his predecessor in social media here now works at a newspaper, and I don't think their job existed 10 years ago, so that's a good point.
Yeah. And there are people all throughout VOA that are doing this in all the different countries, especially Southeast Asia. Facebook is huge in Southeast Asia. Our Cambodian service, I think their Facebook page is the #1 Facebook page in Cambodia. It has the most likes of any. So the social media is expanding around the world, and I think that's only going to, like I said, drive more citizen journalism.
Do you pay in America money or salary to journalists, or not journalists, but citizens that film for you or give you some photos from some events?
I didn't understand the question.
Oh, do we pay citizen journalists who film things for us? We have things like freelancers that we use, but those are professional journalists that go out and they get paid based on what they produce. I know some news organizations will do that. Some of the big TV networks, if there's like a exclusive video or something, they will sometimes pay for that. VOA does not do that. An example might be if there was a plane crash or something and somebody had a cell phone video from inside the plane that they were going to use, they might try to sell that to a news organization. The news organization might buy it. But here at VOA, there's no compensation.
I think it's got to be something really unique and spectacular to be able to charge for it.
right? Or some kind of, catching a politician doing something, or something that they would want to pay for and really, really want to air.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. But by and large, I think if we just are pulling things from Twitter, or pulling videos from YouTube, we don't pay anyone here at VOA, but we wouldn't pay for that. I don't think most news organizations would pay for that kind of thing. I think there's the idea that once you put it out there on social media, it's out there publicly for the taking, so anyone can use it, however which way.
But do you credit the person that put something online or something like that? I mean, do you say this is from Angela from Belgrade, or you just put a picture there?
We probably put your tweet there with the picture in it, so it would be credited to you, come from your account.
Yeah.
Anybody retweeted it, you'd see it in your stream.
Or if you were going to use it like a quote in a story, you would say, so and so said via Twitter, or so and so posted on Twitter, so you would credit them that way.
Yeah, always give credit.
Yeah.
Let's ask if there's any other questions. Or?
Do we have any other questions? Anybody else want to weigh in on anything?
We've kind of hit all these.
Yeah. There's something here that Mark had written down. Do news organizations have a responsibility to protect citizen journalists? For example, publicizing a photo or video they took and including their name, or encouraging them to put themselves in harm's way to get content. I think that speaks to something that I mentioned a little earlier, is that this is going to grow, and it's going to go around the world to places where we haven't been able to go, or weren't able to go for maybe political reasons even. It's a good question, and it's one that it remains to be seen how that's going to work out. I think, again, it's a case-by-case basis. If it's something very sensitive, I think it would be maybe like a story. If they, you had it on off the record or on background, I guess you would not name who the person was. I mean, how would you use that? If, say, you got something that was, very sensitive, and somebody said, "I want to send this to you and use it in the story, but please don't identify me because there's a, could be ramifications."
I would have no problem with that.
Okay.
As long as I felt like it was
Legitimate.
Legitimate, yeah, and that's just.
Okay.
And a lot of these things go down to, for me at least, they just come down to sort of feeling right or wrong on social media. If we have a saying in English: if it's too good to be true, then it probably is. So, if somebody's sending you an unbelievable photo of some politician taking big bags of money from somebody,
might be Photoshopped. And then actually, that's another thing too. With all these new technologies now, you have things like Photoshop, and people can manipulate them and make them look real more easily, and make them look more accurate, even if they're not, than ever before. So that's another, that's going to increase too, and that's a problem you have to weigh as well. But yeah, as far as, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add one example from my organization where I work. We had a lot of people sending us documents about some stories, mainly about privatization, because that's still an issue here. So they send us copies of documents, but we have this fact-checking process after we write a story. So every time we had to actually check the documents officially from official institutions, even though these are copies and they look real. But we have to, if they send us some court documents, we have to ask court, is this original? Do you do that, or do you think that's something that we should do often? Or, I mean, of course, if you do on the daily basis, that takes a time, but we have that kind of commodity to work for weeks, so we have to check it, and we do it.
I mean, I think it's always good to check and do the due diligence, but I think, as you were saying earlier, it's kind of whether it looks good or not, whether it looks accurate. It's, yeah, for documents and things, that's a tough one, because those can be, I guess, forged or faked. But it's, yeah, it's a, I mean, it's a look test, and if it looks right and it sounds right, if it doesn't, then it may not be accurate. But yeah, it's hard to, it's, again, it's kind of a case-by-case thing on, what documents you get, and if you think they're accurate or not, how much investigation you have to do into that.
One thing I've noticed with documents and tips for juicy stories is if you have a suspicion, just keep going back to your source and asking them questions about it. And if they're for real, if they really feel a burning desire to get this information out and it's true, they'll be patient and go through that process with you. If you ask them a follow-up question and they disappear, I wouldn't use those documents.
We have another question from Arbor. How do we as journalists maintain professionalism if we are pushed by our editors to include citizen journalism sources not verified? It has happened to me in certain cases.
Well, you've incorporated, I mean, like in Storify something. We in articles we use these things called Storify, and it's kind of a compilation of tweets that we get from the internet or from Twitter. But we present it as these are the opinions of these people around this particular story. It's not necessarily that we're incorporating them as fact. So that might be one way, is to clearly say these are opinions, this is what people are talking about, to get an idea of what the conversation is, but not to necessarily say, okay, well, this person, what they're saying is absolutely true.
I think of tweets as quotes, almost. You know, if there's a story about crime, and you interview the victim and they say they stole my money, you interview the person who allegedly stole the money and they say, no, I didn't. I don't know. It's the same that one of them is telling the truth, but you don't know. There's no way for you to know. So that's a simplistic example, but I think of them as quotes a lot of the time. They said that this happened, and
yeah. And then as far as citizen journalists, you know, photos or video, incorporating that kind of thing, again, you have to check and make sure it's accurate. But I would note and say this comes, you know, so-and-so submitted via social media, and you can say it's, you know, not verified or allegedly. There are ways to say that this is this person who has sent this out. But if multiple people are sending things and you can determine the accuracy, then I would, you know, you could use it more freely, I guess.
There's any more questions? I guess we can wrap up.
Yeah. Unless there are any other questions?
Any other questions?
Maybe I would just like to thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
My pleasure.
And I'm hopeful that here at VOA and then across the board that more journalists are going to, like I said, use citizen journalist tactics, are going to film things with iPhone, are going to get, you know, little video clips or stream video, and use some of those tactics in actual journalism. Again, it's, like I said, a partnership between the two, and I think it's a good one.
Actually, it's quite interesting. I think it's one of the most interesting modules so far. So we've had a very good discussions back in the class, but also for today, although I missed the first 10 minutes, I guess that it's not that easy as it seems to be a citizen journalist. But also it's quite interesting to have these people who are not journalists, but they are there in the right time, in the right place. So they kind of co-produce with you the whole story. I mean, we as journalists, we get to write very good, we write professionally. I mean, let's say we try to do that, but then we have this very broad context, or we have the thing that really misses. We have something that it's out of our will because we were not there. Also, the competitive part is very interesting because we were talking how is that competitive? To my opinion, it is competitive in a good way, but not like we are going to get fired, or we are going to lose our job because of journalists, because of citizen, like random people being there and taking this pictures or recordings. And I think this is a really good module. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's it's almost this citizen journalist. Citizen journalists maybe isn't the best term to use. They're almost citizen news gatherers, maybe, or citizen sources. And just like any source, you have to take all the sources and all the information that you get and then turn that into your story or your TV piece. So maybe that's a better way to think of these quote-unquote citizen journalists, citizen sources, and that I think resolves maybe some of the conflict that people have saying, oh, well, will citizen journalists replace professional journalists? Not necessarily, because I think they're two different roles and I think they work together.
Yes, in Ukraine right now, because of war, a lot of people still live on the east of the country of Ukraine, and a lot of people start to be journalists. And even in my experience, some of them start to work on some TV channels. They were not professionals, but they start to film, and they good it in good quality. And right now they are members, yes, of channel. Even on Radio Liberty, we have some people that are journalists, but some of them can't tell their names. Even I don't know. I'm an editor of the program about Donbas region, and I don't know the real names of my authors. They just give me information or give me shots, and we use it in a program. And like, it's really very developed in this case of this war, and that's why some journalists really scared about that. We have already said that they will. We will be fired because of these journalists. They are better sometimes than journalists that work on the staff right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.